So I would like to welcome everybody. I'm Erika Justus. I'm your Employer Service Specialist for Dickinson and Iron Counties, and I'm also your Going Pro Workforce Services Specialist for the UP. And of course, we have Holly Peoples on our panel today. And Holly, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thanks, Erika. So I'm Holly Peoples, and I also work with the Employer Specialist team and cover the whole UP. And I guess I should let everybody know who's on the call that no matter where you are in the UP, you have a person who's going to help you through this process. And in the first screen, we're going to see who those people are. So if you don't already know who that person is, you can find that out. So thanks, Erika.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. And then finally, I'd like to give a warm welcome to our moderator, Melinda Fleming. So thank you for joining us today, Melinda. And so again, welcome everyone to our first virtual Going Pro info session. In the past, we have done these info sessions in person. And of course, with COVID, we have all learned to communicate differently. So please bear with us if we run into any technical difficulties today. We're actually trying this new platform and it looks to be really cool. So hopefully this all goes well and we get some good feedback. I'd like to go through a few housekeeping reminders before we get started. As you joined, all participants have been muted. This session is being recorded, and I'm just going to let you know ahead of time, it is a lengthy presentation, but we will be going through it and breaking it down, and there will be time for questions. And if a question does arise, feel free to use the chat. And when you're chatting, there's like a drop-down menu, and I think it defaults to all panelists. Please send it to all panelists and attendees. That way the attendees can see what you're chatting, so maybe we don't get duplicate chats. And also when you're chatting, if you could include the slide number, just in case that we have to go back to refer back to that slide. And that slide number, you'll see it when we get started. It's in the lower right-hand corner. If you feel like you have a really in-depth question that would be easier to just ask that question, feel free to raise your hand and Melinda can unmute you. And Melinda will be monitoring the questions as we go. And I have told her, like, if a bunch start to come through, to feel free to stop me and we can address those. But otherwise, we'll just periodically be stopping throughout the presentation to get those questions answered. And then also we will email the presentation out after today's session to all of you in attendance. And so to get started, I'm going to actually take myself off the video as we go through the slides, and Holly's going to be running the slideshow. Yeah, thanks, Holly. So what I'd like to do is just introduce your contacts across the UP, and these will be the individuals that we will be working closely with you. And we have in Chippewa, we have Jason Venema, and he also covers Mackinac. And in Luce and Schoolcraft, we have Amy Kratz. In Delta and Menominee, we have Kevin Angston. In Dickinson and Iron, myself. In Marquette, Baraga, and Elger, we have Vicki Launderville. And in Ontonagon and Gogebic, we have Steve Leto. And Keweenaw and Houghton, Savannah Doherty. Next slide. So we're going to just kind of go through the agenda items. So we're going to just kind of go through some introductions and some program statistics for you. So some of you may be new to the program, so I'll give you just a little brief history on it. The Going Pro Talent Fund was formerly called the Skilled Trades Training Fund, and it provides competitive awards, not grants. This is a competitive award to employers to assist in training, developing, and retaining current and newly hired employees. And this goes back to, it was Governor Schneider's initiative that he got this into a public act. So the legislature actually appropriates dollars. The training fund is supported through the, or training supported through the talent fund must fill a demonstrated talent need, be short in duration, so 1 year, and lead to a credential or skill that is transferable and recognized by the industry. And like I said, this is a lengthy presentation, and we're going to dive deep into more details about all of this for you. So over the history, the program started in 2014 and was funded through 2019. In fiscal year 2020, the governor had vetoed the awards, so there were not awards for the applications that were submitted for this year. But just looking over the total awards, there have been over 3,000 statewide. The average award amount has been over $31,000. The average training cost per person is over $1,000. And there's been nearly 1 million that has been awarded. And when you look at the graph here, and we'll get into more details about this, but you can see that companies with fewer than 100 employees, there have been over 1,700 awards. Employers with 100 to 500, 15 or just over 1,000 awards. And employers with 500 or more, you can see that number really drops. So there's been 321. And just going back to fiscal year 19 for the UP Michigan Works, we had UP employers receive over 1.2 million in funding, which is amazing. 35 awards were received, ranging anywhere from $1,700 on up to nearly $150,000. And it resulted in the following. We had 17 apprenticeships, 818 classroom trainings, and 175 new hires. Next slide. And now we're going to go into this program overview, and this is going to be kind of the lengthy part of the presentation. So there's a lot of information that you're going to see in this section. So eligible employers. To be eligible for the fund, you must be private sector only, for-profit or nonprofit. And if you're a nonprofit and you're funded mainly by state and federal funding, you're not going to qualify. You need to have a Michigan presence. So I like to use, because I'm on the Wisconsin border, so we have We Energies located here in Iron Mountain, and their corporate office is down in Wisconsin, but they applied and they received awards. And then you need to be compliant on all state tax obligations. So if you're not eligible employers, if you're a tribal casino or a Native American tribe, public institution or entities, ISDs and local school districts, municipally owned utilities, county road commissions, local governments, and federally and community health centers. So we have a lot of like county owned health centers that are not eligible. However, note, if on the unions, you are not eligible to apply, but you may be an eligible training provider. So expectations of the businesses. So when applying, we're looking for businesses that pay wages that are equal to or greater than the prevailing wage in the area for the job title. And when we talk about the prevailing wage, I mean, we're not looking for low wage, like your minimum wage jobs or high turnover occupations. You need to be utilizing Pure Michigan Talent Connect and Michigan Works for recruiting for your job openings. If you are awarded, you will sign a contract and training agreement with Michigan Works, and it is asked that you retain the employees at the completion of training, and you will also be asked to provide an impact story. And new for this year, they've taken this human-centered approach on the impact stories, and they're really looking for these stories that are pulling at the heartstrings, and maybe how, you know, it affected a family, like an individual, the family, the business, where, you know, we have talent staff that might be working with this person that's at the rock bottom and they need our help, and the employer services is working with that company. And we make that referral and they're able to hire that person through the Going Pro funds. And just how it can be life-changing. So that's really the new approach on the impact stories that they're looking for. Employers need to contribute to the training, cash or in kind. And at the end, you'll submit a revised contribution at the completion of training, and we'll get more into what we call the employer contributions or leverage funds further in the presentation. You'll need to provide required documentation for the reimbursement and promptly upon the completion of training, and provide new hire information by the 3rd of each month to UP Michigan Works. Failure to do this may result in the forfeiture of your funds. We will be asking for you to provide wage information prior to training, at the completion of training, and 6 months post-training. If a company is experiencing layoffs, you need to please notify your Michigan Works agency immediately to determine the impact of training. And this is going to be new for us internally. We are going to be working on a very consistent monthly follow-up with your UP Michigan Works employer team. And we're going to be checking in with companies that have received awards monthly to make sure there aren't any changes and follow up with those new hires. And of course, just maintain that contact with your Michigan Works agency and provide requested information as needed. So your eligible trainees are permanent full-time employees. And when we say full-time, that's 32 hours or more. Seasonal or part-time employees are not eligible. The employee needs to work primarily in Michigan, and I get to use my Wisconsin border experience. So back when this program had first started, Wisconsin or other residents of other states were not eligible to receive funding. And, you know, we had mentioned this to the state, and they're very receptive to listening to us. And so they had made this change. So actually, any like Wisconsin residents can absolutely be on the employer's training plan and receive that funding. And they also need to be 18 years or older. Now there's 3 types of training, and there's 3 ways to get reimbursed. So there's classroom or customized training for your current employees or individuals to be hired. New employee on the job, so those are going to be your individuals that you are going to hire. And then new USDOL registered apprenticeships for your current first-year employees or individuals to be hired. So here's how the reimbursement for the cost of training goes. So for classroom training for your current or new employees, it's not to exceed $1,500 per person. For a new employee that you hire and you're going to be doing on-the-job training with them, it is not to exceed the $1,500 per person. And for the registered apprenticeship for a current or new, it's not to exceed $3,000. And with the classroom and the new employee, I kind of like to mention this as well. So if you're planning on having new hires, and you also want to send those new hires maybe for like a welding training, you cannot exceed the $1,500 for that person. So you'll either take a reduction in like the on-the-job training so we can pay for the welding, but just keep in mind, it's that $1,500 max. So the training is to be short in duration. So 3 to 6 months is kind of like the window that they like to see, and apprenticeship is the exception. The training this year should start as early as February 1st, and that would be the earliest. And then all training should be completed by January 31st, 2022 at the latest. And this includes the 90-day retention for your last new hires, which we're going to go into more detail about that as we go along. For your classroom training, it can be conducted by a third party unless exclusive in nature. It must lead to a recognizable credential or certificate. It may take place at a training provider, on-site at the company, or online if approved. For your new hires, for the on-the-job training, the individuals must be hired no earlier than 30 days prior to, on, or after the award date. And this should not be utilized for low-wage, high-turnover occupations. And the reimbursement, again, is based on retention, and that's that 30, 60, 90 days. So this is kind of the breakdown of how that on-the-job training reimbursement goes. So you receive 50% reimbursement at 30 days of retention, 75 at 60, and 100% of that $1,500 if they make the 90-day retention. And if you've never applied, when you do these training plans, you're going to put a number of hours for your internal training. So you can see this example here that say you hire the individual on January 3rd. Your internal training is going to basically be from the 3rd to January 24th for those 120 hours that you put on your training plan. Then from there, that's when the 30, 60, 90 days kicks in. And then by April 24th, you would be able to request your full reimbursement for the $1,500. So there is documentation that's required for reimbursement, and this is fairly strict. So for your new hire reporting, we're going to need the hire date. If it's a screenshot, because all payroll systems are a little bit different. So you might have to do screenshots and maybe not, but we'll need that, your starting wage, and if this person qualifies for a target population, which you'll learn more about here shortly. We'll need payroll documentation supporting basically the 90 days. And if they were terminated, we'll need like a termination date or a screenshot showing that. For the apprenticeship reporting, a RAPIDS printout, payroll, a specific individual demographic form, certificate of completion, and grades. And later in the presentation, we've got a slide that really kind of breaks this down better for you. And then if you receive classroom or customized training, we're going to need that certificate of completion, grades, or sign-in sheet showing that the individuals attended. And we'll also need an invoice from the training provider. And we reimburse the company only, not the training provider. So now we can talk about the targeted incentives, and this is basically a way for you to potentially receive some additional money from underrepresented populations. And we've always had these 4 targets, and these are for new hires. So if the person is a veteran, an active military reservist, an older worker, which is 55 or older, or a returning citizen, you can request with the proper documentation an additional $500. So like I just use like for a veteran, we would request like a DD 214, an older worker, a copy of like the driver's license would work. New for this year is high school diploma or equivalency path, and that is a $1,000 incentive. And there's been a little bit of confusing language in this. We're kind of working through the details, but basically what it is an individual who achieves at least 75% of completion of the high school diploma equivalency program during work hours, and on-the-job training and classroom training would need to be on the training plan associated with that particular trainee. So if you have a current employee that's working for you, that you know doesn't have their high school diploma and is working towards it, or you encourage them, you could apply for this $1,000 with the proper documentation. Now keep in mind with these incentives that you can't, if you have a veteran and an older worker, like that's the same person, you can only get one $500 incentive, not $1,000. Next slide. So apprenticeship training. This is for new registered apprentice, the individual who begins registered apprenticeship at any point on or after January 1st, 2021, or a first-year apprentice to cover the first-year courses. An individual not currently in a U.S. DOL registered apprenticeship. And with this, you may receive up to $3,000 per training, and it is a combination of classroom and on-site work experience. It cannot be reimbursed for 100% of that on-site work experience. You've got to have that classroom training mixed with it.
Excuse me, or it can be online for apprentices too.
Thanks, Holly.
Whoops, I went one too far. Okay.
Okay, and so again, here was some more confusing language that we're really kind of waiting for some clarification from the state on. But what we want you to do is just think first year rather than new, because that person may have started their apprenticeship like maybe 3 months ago, and that would they would qualify. And I'm going to kind of lean on Holly for this one because she's more of the apprenticeship expert. So am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, exactly. So most apprenticeships, like the most electrical journeyman apprenticeships, take 5 years to do. So they're not going to cover anybody who's in year 2 through 5, but anybody who's anywhere in year 1 counts for this, if that helps clear it up.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you. And so I had mentioned more about the documentation. So for those that are not familiar with the documentation required, so we talk about RAPIDS, and what that is that's Registered Apprenticeship Partners Information Data System. And you need to get a printout of that. You'll need a new apprenticeship demographic form, which we can provide, and both are required at the beginning of the ward or as soon as they are enrolled into the apprenticeship, whichever is sooner. And again, you know, if this occurs, we will definitely work closely with you on this information. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of training clarification because this comes up quite often. So safety training, if it is normal cost of doing business, it's not eligible. And we're going to go into more detail on that. The same with the lien. They're looking for that black or green belt preferred, and they really want supporting Rationale. And Going Pro will not support like general overview. The business has to have like that overall lean strategy. And again, that would be provided in the Rationale with that hands-on component to the training. And consulting services are not covered. However, a lot of times you're gonna get like quotes and they say consulting, and really it's not. It's way more in-depth training than consulting. And if that word comes up, don't hesitate to reach out to your employer services just to like run it by them, because I think, you know, a lot of times you just have to put this in your Rationale why it's called consulting. But if you can show and upload the documentation showing this is really valid and important, most likely that will get funded.
That's a really good point about that word choice, Erika, because that's the same thing for, say, seminar, workshop, what's the other one, conference. You know, what they don't want is like a one-day Fred Pryor seminar where everybody just takes the day off of work and goes and drinks coffee at the Holiday Inn. But, you know, if that if it is called a seminar, but really it's really in-depth training that's going to upskill people, we just have to call it training, not seminar. And sometimes, and we'll help companies through all of that semantic stuff. Like whenever a company submits their rationale, we'll go through it and look for those kinds of things that will flip up a red flag to a scoring person, but that we could say it in a way that it would get a good score. And then when it comes to those quality systems, if you're a company that's already working with Kristen Smith at Northern Initiatives through the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center, and even if you're not, but you want to, they have training kind of in packages that supports these quality systems, that their packages and the way that they present it are acceptable to going pro. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and Kristen, she's really great at, I mean, she really knows this program really well. So she's a great partner and training provider to lean on. And no pun intended on the lean. So, okay, allowable training providers. So your Michigan community colleges and universities, private training providers, your USDOL joint apprenticeship training centers, your vendors providing training in operation of equipment or systems for which they were the provider. So I like to use an example here because sometimes I think this gets overlooked when companies are applying for this. If you're getting new equipment and maybe you've paid like for the training, like in that purchase like package, I mean, definitely reach out to us because you can apply for that up to $1,500 for your individuals to be trained on that new equipment. So I think sometimes this gets overlooked. Employers only, if the resources or equipment are exclusive and the training is not available elsewhere. And again, this is just all comes down to that supporting rationale in your application. And then new allowable training providers for this year is community-based organizations, intermediate school districts, and school districts. So here's some eligible and ineligible training. So leadership management and supervision with course description, and we're going to go into a little more detail with this one. Quality systems can be okay if higher level, and basically the same with the safety as we had talked about. If they're looking for that higher level training, not just your day-to-day safety that's part of doing business. So online is also allowed per the following. So
Erika, I'm very sorry, but we have a question.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. It says Tina. Tina, would you like to ask your question?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So my question is on page 25. So when you were talking about new equipment, does that mean we can use employees that we already have, or does it have to be a new hire to train them on that new equipment?
Nope, that can be your current employee because yep, they're gonna need to learn how to run that new equipment.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome, thank you. Okay, so back to online. So again, if that training can't be obtained locally, if the training is not within reasonable travel time, and I mean, let's face it, in the UP, sometimes, I mean, a lot of these trainings are down in Detroit. So, I mean, or elsewhere. So, you know, if you can provide that in your rationale. If training is not offered in the classroom, the course is instructor-led, virtual training versus online learning at the trainee's own pace. So basically, they would prefer to see that this is instructor-led. They really just don't want the trainee to be working on this at their own pace. And the training results in a credential specific to the customized short-term technical skill. And ineligible training, I threw these on here because these were questionable this year, but they did decide that there still will be no Microsoft Office training at any level, no human resource training, and they don't want to see those 1-hour webinars or one-day leaderships like Holly had mentioned. And then just so leadership used to be excluded, and they've come around on that using some of this criteria. So keep this, you know, as part of like your overall plan or your strategy. And you need to describe that in your application and rationale, and not just like a basic overview. They don't want to see like a standalone or self-contained seminar, workshop, webinar. And nothing that's 100% online. So I've had a couple companies, and we've seen actually I would say a large increase in these trainings. So basically what they're looking for is that your company will provide like a syllabus and a curriculum of what they're going to be doing. And we would submit that with your application.
Mm-hmm. And the other part of some of this is MMTC and other training providers have, for I don't know whatever reason, have really focused on developing some really good, solid manufacturing supervisory training. I suppose it's because a lot of people who become supervisors in a manufacturing environment get promoted from more of a frontline role, and then all of a sudden you're supervising your friends and stuff like that. So these programs have been developed, and I think the one that's probably the one that we see most often requested is through the MMTC and has been funded a number of times through this program.
Yeah, and I've had the Dale Carnegie actually get funded a couple times too, and the success story through that program has just been amazing with that particular company.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because I don't remember if we say this in this PowerPoint presentation, but if you are a company who thinks you'd like to access some training, but you're really not sure where to look for it, we have all the data and background from all the training that we've worked with back to 2015. So we have a lot of information that we can share with you if you're looking for training.
Okay, so just some prohibited training. So in-house training that's not exclusive in nature, literacy, English as a second language, no soft skill training. Again, like we had mentioned, the seminars, conferences, and workshops, but just remember, if you think that they're more in depth than just that one day, please reach out to us. Let us look at that and see if we can make that work. Consulting, that's another one. You know, we just have to be careful on that language. Continuing education credits, back to that safety training, above the cost of doing business. They want that higher level. They're not going to cover subscriptions, wage reimbursement for current employees. And adult education still remains ineligible, but just remember now that may qualify for a target population incentive.
Yeah, and that's that confusing part that we're really trying to work through right now.
The prohibited expenses are like the purchase of tools and equipment. And I'll say more like, you know, like computers and hand tools. Licensing fees, testing fees, curriculum development, travel costs for the trainee or the trainer, basically the same with meals. So, you know, during your application, you need to have your employer contributions or leverage funds, and these would all be eligible to be counted as that. So again, just keep those things in mind. So now we're going to talk about an industry-led collaborative. So if we go into our ILC lingo, that's what that stands for. And basically it's a partnership of 2 or more companies with the objective of participating in a shared training resource. And this is a separate application and a separate scoring criteria. And what'll happen is Going Pro is going to set some funds aside, and the amount based on the overall funding available. This will pretty much, as companies start to apply for this, I mean, once it's gone, it's gone. Pretty much the same with the individual application. The open application period until those funds are exhausted, and then the applications may be submitted on April of 2021, and they haven't exactly released the date, but just kind of project that if you're thinking about applying for that. And 1 ILC award per employer. So employers may have 1 independent award for each location, along with 1 ILC award. And every training on the plan must be shared by at least 2 of the partner employers. So the application process, here's how this works. So the business may submit an independent application and may also elect to participate in, like I said, the 1 industry-led collaborative. The talent fund is not guaranteed funding. Again, these are those competitive awards. And anticipate that the demand is definitely going to exceed the supply. Reimbursement cannot be approved for training that occurs prior to the award being approved. And again, this is a reimbursement award. There's no upfront money coming to you. The company needs to not have any tax obligations, and the applications are only available through Michigan Works. So sometimes you'll hear us talking about modifications, and what a modification is, if you receive an award, sometimes your circumstances change within your company and the approved award, and you're gonna need to possibly submit a modification for approval. And so just some scenarios that could happen is that maybe your training course changes, or you have a reduction or a change in the cost of the training. This is going to be kind of a new change from fiscal year 19. We were allowed to transfer funds between new employees and new hires and current employees in either direction. So I'll just use an example. I had a company that expected to have, they were just going gangbusters and had a bunch of new hires planned, and then all of a sudden they got notice that they were on hold for new hires. So we had to get creative and transfer those new hires up to classroom training, and we did a pretty good job of being able to utilize all their funds, but we had to submit several modifications. This will no longer be available to do. And so, you know, as you're doing your applications, really drill down on your training needs, because again, this won't be an option. If your current employees and new hires are removed, so just say kind of in the same situation, say you plan on a bunch of new hires and then all of a sudden you just don't see that happening, please reach out to your employer's specialist, because we'll want to submit a modification as soon as possible so we can get that money back to the state, so they can possibly use it for other awards. If you're unable to change the end date beyond 12 months of training, so sometimes same thing, like you're going along and all of a sudden there's no way you're going to be able to get that training done within those 12 months, we'll want to submit a modification for that. However, you will not be able to apply for the next year. And again, communicate all of this information with your employer specialist, even if you're not sure yourself, because it's better to be on top of it than behind. And then there'll be some guidance with the release of our new online system. and how this functionality is going to work, and we still don't know. So more to come on that, and we're going to talk more about the WBLOMS shortly.
Yeah, and the other thing about communicating changes or challenges with your employer specialist is sometimes we can communicate with the people that run this program in Lansing. They're really great to work with, and they'll always do their best to help us help the company. And so sometimes they're able to, you know, give us some guidance that maybe we didn't think of. So we need to know what a company is struggling with so we can try to help them.
Okay, so then we're gonna move on to some highlights for fiscal year 21. So a little bit of changes because we really didn't expect. Oh, go ahead, Melinda.
We have a question from Johanna in the chat. What is the annual time frame for the application process? It says it looks like the training period is February to January.
Yep, we're going right into that. So great question from Joanna. Thank you. So the application and the award cycle, okay, this has changed because again, we really didn't expect the funding. So we're kind of a little bit behind, but it's all going to work. So the application is going to open November 2nd, and you have until November 30th to get that completed. There's 27 million available. Again, it's competitive scoring, and it sounded like they were going to start scoring these applications as soon as they're coming in. They're going to get going because they know there's going to be that huge demand. And they plan on announcing the awards mid-January, so I'll just kind of count on that. And so the reason in the past, the 12-month award cycle was January 1st through December 31st, but we had to push it out, and that's where the whole February comes in. So the award cycle is going to begin February 1st, and you're going to want to have all your training wrapped up no later than January 31st, 2022. And then just a few reminders, all awards must be closed out, like I had mentioned. Like if you can't get that closed out and you need to submit a modification, you're not going to be able to apply again for fiscal year 2022. An employer cannot apply for future as I had just mentioned. And then there is the new electronic application process. If you guys have gone through it last year, some of you will be familiar, but there are going to be some changes, and we're waiting for guidance in that department. Hopefully we'll have some more updates tomorrow from the state. And then there is a possibility of having a queue for the unfunded fiscal year 21 applications. And again, they're gonna vet each company with the Michigan Department of Treasury. If you do have an obligation, you'll have 60 days to resolve it if you do get an award. Now we'll hop into the scoring. So this is like very important part of your application, and this year there's 85 points. So of course you want to try and get as many points as possible. And we talk about your rationale, because this is, you have 45 points here. And we will work closely with each company to make sure that you are maxing out these 45 points, because we look at it that there's no reason that we're not sending down good rationales with your application. And they're going to be looking this year for some COVID impact. So you're going to want to try and tie that in. And then your employer contributions, we've talked about this, and I'll refer to them as leverage funds a lot of times. So you can get up to 5 points here. So if you're doing a one-to-one match, that's 5 points. If it's less than that, 3, and if you don't have any contributions, you're not going to get any points there. We talked about the size of the company. So if you're under 100 full-time employees, that's 10 points. And then you can receive up to 5 points for your new hires. So if 40% of your trainees are new hires, you get 5 points there. If 10 to 39% are new hires, you get 3 points, and then fewer than 10, you have 0 points. If you have an application which includes a registered apprentice, that's 5 points. And an application includes a minimum of 1 training in partnership with a college, university, or community college that results in an earned college credit that could apply towards a certificate or degree. You get 5 points for that. And they're once again looking at the amount of the award that you're requesting. So if you're under 50,000, you're going to get those full 10 points, and then you can see that it goes down by the amount that you're over and above that 50,000.
Mm-hmm. And our goal is to work with you on this and maximize your amount of points that we think we can get for you.
So back to the rationale, because this is just so important. So they're gonna, you're gonna do like an introductory statement, and it's gonna break it down into the points. And we've got some great tools to help you with this, to give you some ideas of what to include. And you're gonna do like a description of your need and your business case and your training. If you've had an award, how it's impacted you. And again, the ILCs are a little bit different, and there's actually 2 parts to that rationale. But I think, what we just really want you to drill down and break these down into like readable paragraphs with like highlights, because you need to tell your story to the person that's doing the scoring, and they might not know who this company is up in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan. So this is your opportunity to basically sell your company, your needs, and break it down so it's readable. So back to the employer contributions, wages of employees while in training, those travel costs while in training, cost of a new equipment or software directly related to training, supportive services, admin, loss of productivity due to employees attending the training. And I encourage my employers to come up with like an Excel or a Word document that we can attach to the application supporting these numbers. So like they're really breaking it down. They just didn't pull a number out of a hat to say, oh yeah, this is what we're contributing. So, put a little bit of time in that. And I think that's super helpful when they're scoring this as well.
Mm-hmm. And this year they mentioned, and they haven't said what the mechanism for this is going to be, but they did mention that they were going to require a little bit more documentation of what those leveraged funds really are. And I feel like most of the time, not all of the time, but a good part of the time, that top bullet, wages of employees while in training, is going to get you to your match.
We do have another question in the chat from an employee from WITCON. They're asking, we have been looking for new employees since before COVID. How can we get new employees? Doesn't seem realistic to be able to get and train new employees.
Yeah, so that's a great question. That you're not the only company that's, facing this. I'm not sure if you're, where are you located? Maybe you could type that in real quick.
I also just unmuted them.
Oh, sure.
So they should be able to unmute themselves now and talk. They chatted Chassel.
Okay, all right. I would recommend that you're working with your employer services in that area. We have many great programs, and, maybe you need to just sit down and I'm not sure, how you're promoting your open positions, but that's what we're here to do is take a look at, what you're doing. Maybe we need to work on your job description. Sometimes wages, are discussed. And, you know, we've got some different avenues and some really cool new things with our new website and Facebook that we're having like really good luck getting the word out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just did a campaign called UP Jobs Now that was really successful. And I mean, it's a challenge out there across industry sectors and across occupations and across the geography. Like almost no matter where you are right now, companies are really struggling to find new people to come to work for them. But we certainly have some tools in our toolbox, and we can make sure that your person reaches out to you. I feel like that's Savannah.
Yeah, Deb had just, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it's Savannah.
We'll make sure that that connection gets made.
It sounds like they're already working together. I think that maybe this is just a difficult time in the labor market, and maybe you and Savannah can get back together and discuss some more strategies.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
I'm trying, where were we in?
Next slide.
Oh, yep, I was gonna say, I think we did that one. Thanks. Okay, so when we talk about WBLOMS, again, one of those acronyms that we all talk about, and you guys are going, what is that? So that is the Work-Based Learning Online Management System. So it's our new online system that we did use last year, and it's just becoming, they're working with it. It's going to be great when we get all done with this. So very excited to see how it progresses. But this year, again, you will be doing an online application and an online training plan. They are still working on updating the user guide, and as soon as we get that, we will get that out to you. But we are encouraging employers right now, if you've applied in the past, or if not, at least go to the site, and that'll be on our next slide, and get your account credentials checked and your authorization request in, because we can go ahead now and get you approved, and then it's just a matter of really waiting until November 2nd before they release the online application and training plan. But at least we've got you set up, and we know that we can start working with you. And I know that's like a week away, but I was going to say, plan to get you started on working on those rationales and all that good stuff.
And really making connections with training providers. And this might be on a future slide, I can't remember, but now is the time to be talking to the training providers that you're thinking about utilizing for training, and getting them lined up to make sure that they can do what you need them to do. And then if you need more ideas for training providers, we generally will have some good ideas for you.
Yeah, so here, please go get started. Go to michigan.gov/talent fund, and you can click right on that link, and it's going to basically take you down. You can see the sign-on page if you're new, and I know it's really hard to see, but there is like an area to click if you're new to this. Now, if you forgot your credentials from last year and you reset your password, keep in mind this is all tied in now to Pure Michigan Talent Connect. And so if you go in to go post a job and all of a sudden you can't log in, that's why. It's going to automatically tie those passwords when you change them.
Yeah, then the other way around, if you don't know, because you can use your PMTC credentials to get into WBLOMS, and if you don't know your PMTC credentials, we can reset them for you to what you want them to be, and then you can use those.
So typically when we used to have our in-person info sessions, we would invite like our local training providers and partners to be there to answer questions and promote their trainings. So this year, just being our first time doing this online, what we've done is we've created slides for the ones that responded back to us. So there's some information there, so take advantage of these folks. You've got Bay College, you have Escanaba and Iron Mountain contacts, and I'm just going to say this for all these providers, they can customize. So again, if you're thinking you need something special, please reach out to them and see what they can do for you. And they're more than willing to help. So we've got GoGebic on there. You can talk to Glenn. And here's just like some previous topics that they've done. You can do next slide. NMU, Stephanie Langlois would be your contact there. Here's some of the programs that they've done in the past. And then Stephanie had included the Cybersecurity Institute as well. And it looks like Doug Miller is the contact for that. And it's kind of at the bottom of the slide there. And then again, Kristen Smith. I have more information if anybody's interested, but actually she's, feel free to reach out to Kristen. Again, she can really work with customized training and getting you in the direction that you might need to go, as well as us. Like Holly had mentioned, we have like lists and lists of training that's been done and those resources. So again, don't hesitate to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
So any more questions, comments?
When it's virtual, it gets so quiet when there's no questions.
And I can't, did we really get through this in an hour?
Oh, we do have one question that says, I'm a newbie. Can you define lean training?
Yeah, do you want to go back Holly, to maybe Kristen's slide quick? Because I think it kind of gives it a good breakdown.
So lean, the fundamental concept behind lean is to identify areas of your business where you may be having waste, and waste can be defined as all kinds of different things. Like, for instance, we've had companies who worked on this process, and it'll be a manufacturing company, and they work like in cells, and they'll count the steps that an operator takes to do a particular process, or to change a tool, or to do whatever it is they do. And they'll find out that this person is walking like 6 miles a night to do a particular job. Well, if they were to look at the way that that cell is set up and move some of the things in the cell around, like maybe there's a table with tools on it that needs to be closer, or maybe there's some things that can be hung on a wall, or whatever those things could be, to eliminate those steps. And they'll get those steps down to 2 miles a night, or whatever it is. Or we were on a tour of Marionette Marine not too long ago, when they used these concepts and they removed like 8 miles that a piece of steel has to move from when they get the raw material in to when they launch a ship. They took 8 miles out of that process. So it can be like Kristen's slide has here, it can be office type stuff, like how many times and how many people are touching a piece of paper, when that process could be streamlined and save time. And time is money.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting when you get to go into a company that's practicing it, and all the whiteboards, and like every morning, like they'll meet and they do like these huddles, and they want to hear the people like on the ground that are working with the product. What are you seeing? How can we fix this? How can we make it better? And it's that whole process of like just working together on new ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know one company, their big slogan is, I think it's save 2 seconds a day. Because if everybody saves 2 seconds a day, it's huge ultimately when you look at the whole cost of running that business. Save 2 seconds a day.
And I was going to say one other like lean thing, because we have a particular company here in Iron Mountain, and I forget what they call it technically, but it's where all the parts are, and it's like this parts cart, and each place has, I mean, like the designated part needs to be there. So when you're putting the product together, you're working from that, like if it's missing, you know that there's a problem. Like it just keeps everything like really clean and organized.
It's called visual management, and then they use just in time. It's pretty neat. A lot of healthcare are using things that would be Lean Six Sigma concepts to save money and time and resources.
And I was going to say for this question, I mean, if you really want to hear a lean expert, talk to Kristen Smith. Yeah, she's amazing at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And she's great. She's so customer service oriented. She's awesome. Ooh. Other questions?
I know that a comment had just come out about this presentation, and yes, we will definitely be sending that out to you guys. And please reach out to your employer service specialist with any questions or interest, so we can get you started in the process. And we are here to support you.
For sure. And you know, our goal is every year that this program has been around, our goal is let's get more applications in, more applications funded, and more money to companies in the UP. So that's our goal, just so you know that, and we're very committed to that. Okay, well, I guess thank you all, and Erika, I don't know if you want to close anything out.
I don't think so. Thank you all for participating, and look forward to working with you down the road.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think Melinda can close us down.